Hey everyone, my name is Perry, and welcome back to the Cassette Phase. So happy Monday to you. I just wanted to pop on quickly today for another episode of today's Time Capsule. And since we're heading into the final weeks of the football season, I figured why not open up some cards today. So we've got an unopened pack of Fleer NFL football cards from 1990. Because to me, sports cards, and to a lesser extent, some of the pop culture and movie-related trading cards from the 80s and the 90s are some of the most nostalgic little tokens that we can hold in our hands. When I was a kid, I used to memorize the stats from the backs of baseball cards. And for a few years there, I used to really look forward to getting the newest set of NBA cards whenever they released. But the most nostalgic part, for me, is sitting down, opening up a new pack of cards, and just seeing who you got. You know, sitting down on the curb, right outside a 7-Eleven or a Circle K, a BMX bike laying on its side right next to you, setting down your ice-cold cherry Coke or setting aside your pack of Big League Chew, and getting ready to open up that pack and do the whole need it, got it, need it thing. Are you with me on that? Did you look forward to the simple joy of a new stack of baseball cards or football cards to add to your collection? Did you do like I did and trade them with your friends on the playground? Do you have a few minutes to spend reminiscing with me here in the den today? If so, come hang out. Okay everyone, welcome back to the Ottoman and welcome to another great day here in the den. As you know, the Ottoman is where we go when we want to take a close look at some nostalgic items. And that's what we're going to do today with this pack of 1990 Fleer NFL cards. Now just real quickly, where did I get this pack? Well, over the weekend, we went and visited one of our favorite malls, which just happens to be pretty much on its last legs here in the North Texas region. We found out that the Dillard's was closing, the Macy's was already closed, most of the stores were already gone, and because we have such sentimental memories of taking the kids to see Santa there when they were really little and pushing the stroller all around that mall because it was always the least crowded mall in the area, we wanted to visit it one more time and walk through Dillard's and take a look at some of the Christmas stuff, and we did that. But there also happens to be a collectibles store in there just kind of hanging on, you know, lots of Funko Pops, lots of anime statues, lots of sports memorabilia, including a stand-up arcade 1-up unit of NBA Jam, which my son and I played as the Seattle Sonics while we were in there. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, they had a ton of old vintage sports cards, and for cheap, as you can see here, $3 was the price on this particular pack, and that's pretty good considering it was, you know, $1.49 back in 1990. Yeah, so my son got some cool, you know, modern cards, and of course old dad had to grab some vintage ones, and I think this might start a little miniature collection for me because I have a couple of old vintage sports card albums that are empty. I've got one binder full of all my different trading cards that I've shown you guys here on the channel before, but it's everything. It's, you know, movie and cartoon cards and Ninja Turtle sticker cards and all kinds of stuff like that mixed in with some of my sports cards. But I think I might have to do like a little album for football and another separate album for baseball. It's kind of a slippery slope to get into card collecting again, but I'm not looking for anything valuable. You know, I'm not looking to flip these or trade them in or resell them. All I'm looking for here, like I said in the intro, is the nostalgic feeling of opening up a new pack of cards and seeing who you got. Now, who am I hoping for in this? Some of my favorite players from around this era. I would be ecstatic if there was a Jerry Rice, maybe like a Steve Largent. I liked Steve Atwater for the Broncos because he played for Arkansas in college. Really good safety, defensive back. Obviously like Dan Marino, Joe Montana, some of the 49ers from back then, Roger Craig. Yeah, I'd be happy with any of those, honestly. Maybe like an Ickey Woods from the Bengals. I don't know, but we're gonna find out together. So let's go ahead and open this thing up and see what we got. See if they gave me a little pull tab or if it's just gonna be, okay. Like I said, I'm not trying to keep these things in mint condition or anything like that. Well, right off the bat, I see a Washington Redskins card, which is cool. I remember watching the Super Bowl with Doug Williams against the Broncos, and then another Super Bowl with this guy, Mark Rippon. You know, as a Cowboy fan, these guys used to tear us up, but good to see Mark Rippon there. So Ricky Dixon, I remember the name. I liked the Bengals a lot. You guys will find out about me if you haven't already. I did a whole video on football last year. There are teams that I like just based on nostalgia, just because I liked their uniforms when I was a kid, just because I liked certain players when I was a kid. You know, the home team, the Cowboys, will always be number one, but I have about 5 or 6 other teams that are like, you know, 1A or number 2. And I always liked the Bengals as a kid. I don't remember this particular player, but what a cool helmet. Speaking of cool helmets and cool uniforms, how great are the old Orange Crush Denver Broncos jerseys? And they wore these a few times this year, including in a game against the Cowboys, and it's always so great to see those again. Simon Fletcher sounds familiar too. Let's see who we got next. All right, back when they were the San Diego Chargers. Don't really remember Anthony Miller. This is another team that I thought had really cool helmets when I was a kid. And they've gone back to the navy blue a couple times. I think it looks awesome when they do that. So here's a team that hasn't changed much at all about their look, which is cool. There's something to be said for that too. Not familiar with the Indianapolis Colts punter from 1990, but there he is, in case anyone was wondering. All right, what do we have here? Okay, so an NFL draft choice. I was wondering why it's a Chiefs player, but he's in his college gear. Now that makes sense. I don't remember this guy ever being a big success in the league. I could be wrong. Let me know. Percy Snow. Now here's a cool old throwback. The New England Patriots. Don't remember Danny Villa. Don't remember him, but I sure remember that great uniform and helmet combo. I got really excited for a second when I saw that helmet. I was really hoping it was Barry Sanders, but no such luck. That's okay. We'll take Richard Johnson, wide receiver. Never heard of him. Never heard of him, honestly. Now there's a good one. This may have been my favorite Cowboys player of the late 80s, early 90s. The playmaker, Michael Irvin. You know, my aunt flew me down here for a game one time. I was still living in Oklahoma. And this was back when, you know, you could drop your kid off on a plane. The crew would watch over them, you know, as a 9 or 10-year-old. And you'd fly by yourself from Oklahoma City to Dallas and get off the plane, and your aunt or your relative would be there waiting on you. And she did that for me, and we went and watched the Cowboys play. And Michael Irvin had a big game that day, if I remember correctly. Very cool card. That's probably my favorite so far. Let's set him over here. Ed West from the Green Bay Packers. I don't know. Packers fans, let me know. What do we have here? A checklist. Yep. Always got to mix in a checklist. I should have counted. I wonder, does that count as one of my cards or no? Keep it to the side. Remember when the Falcons wore red? Makes me think of Deion Sanders, but I don't know this player. Cool look, though. All right, so there's a good quarterback from 1990, Rich Gannon, on the Vikings. The Vikings are one of those teams that I've always liked. You know, they're not a rival of the Cowboys. You know, they're up in Minneapolis, so they never really, you know, they didn't play a lot of my favorite teams very often, so I didn't really have a rooting interest against them. I just thought I always loved the purple color scheme, and the helmets were really cool. They had some fun wide receivers. You know, everybody remembers Chris Carter, but does anyone remember Anthony Carter? He was one of my favorites, and I think Rich Gannon threw to him quite a bit. Very cool card there. Happy with that one. Another quarterback, Jeff Hostetler of Super Bowl fame. One of the quarterbacks to beat the Bills in the Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. You know, he came in as a backup for Phil Simms and led him to the win, I'm pretty sure. Jeff Hostetler. Wish the Giants would go back to that look too. You know, I liked that old logo better, and I also thought it was cool when the helmet, and this happened with the Vikings home uniforms too. I liked it when the helmet was a little bit darker color than the jersey because they couldn't quite get them to match with the technology they had back then. I thought it made for a really cool look. All right, we got our first Steeler of the day. Not familiar with David Little, but there he is. I just got to say the design of these cards is pretty basic, pretty simple, but very retro and very nostalgic. It's definitely hitting the right spot for that. Another one of my favorites, the Browns. I was wearing am wearing a Browns hoodie today in the video. Something about the simple orange helmet. And this also stems back to, as I've talked about before on the channel, those NFL pencils that I used to collect from my school store. I would use my allowance and buy those NFL pencils, and for some reason there are always a ton of Browns ones left, so I always had a bunch of those in my pencil case, and ever since then I've kind of liked the Browns, even though they are rarely competitive. I don't know that player. That's okay. All right, I saw the old Chiefs, and for a second I was hoping it was Christian Okoye, but no such luck. That's okay. Another Redskins card here. I do remember the name Chip Lohmiller. Didn't he also play for the Cardinals? The St. Louis Cardinals, then the Phoenix Cardinals, then the Arizona Cardinals? I liked that team a lot too. They actually used to be in the same division with the Redskins and the Cowboys. Now there's the Bengals uniform that I liked. The black with that bright red-orange helmet, the tiger stripes. No memory of Jason Buck, but I liked his team. Also a big Jets fan. Green's one of my favorite colors. I thought that their whole look was kind of unique when we were kids, and they've gone back to this look in recent years, which has been amazing. But yeah, the very first NFL game I ever watched, or remember watching anyway, was walking into my parents' bedroom while my dad had a little CRT TV sitting up on the dresser. I think it was a preseason game because it was the Giants versus the Jets. And the Jets' green helmets stuck out to me as a little kid as something pretty cool. So they're also one of my teams that I enjoy watching. Don't remember James Hasty though. Very few superstar players in this pack so far, but that's okay. Tom Tupa. I remember the name. I had forgotten that he was a quarterback. I loved these old Cardinals jerseys though, with the Arizona flag on the sleeve. And I was a St. Louis Cardinals fan in baseball, and so it made sense that I'd also be a St. Louis Cardinals fan in football. I don't know. What do we have here? Look at these great old Tampa Bay Buccaneers uniforms. And I do remember Mark Carrier, although I associate him more with the Bears. Was he or was he not one of the Bears wide receivers on Super Tecmo Bowl? I could be mixing him up with Willie Gault. I don't know. Cool player though, really cool uniforms. Yeah, and I don't want to make this whole video about just all about the helmets and the uniforms, but that's part of the nostalgia for me. And seeing the Seahawks look like this, you know, and they'll bust these out again, you know, for throwbacks. And I always appreciate it when they do because they're just so sharp on TV. They look so good and eye-catching compared to those muddy blue ones they usually wear. I'm not a Seahawks fan by any means, but that's pretty cool. Pretty cool card there, Joe Nash. Now this, I believe, is kind of a Lions icon. I definitely remember Jerry Ball being an impactful player. Yeah, I do remember him. Who's we got here? Okay, another quarterback, Mike Tomczak. story about him. I mean, that's what you're here for, right? The random stories that I have associated with some of the memories of these players. I went to an estate sale a few years back, and it was a Pepsi employee, and there was a Pepsi VHS tape, and I grabbed it because it had the Pepsi logo on it. I've actually popped in and shown it here on the channel. It was a screening for an old Pepsi commercial from like 1989, and I'm pretty sure Mike Tomczak was in it at the end. Almost positive on that. It could have been Jim Harbaugh, but I want to say it was Mike Tomczak. All right, Bobby Hebert. He was a pretty good quarterback for a few seasons there for the Saints. I remember him. We've got another Green Bay Packer, Blair Bush. So far, this pack is full of just about the most like run-of-the-mill players from 1990 that you could imagine, but that's okay. I'm still having a good time looking through them. Wide receiver Sean Collins. Never heard of him. And I consider myself somewhat of an NFL football historian, especially from this era, and I am pulling players that I have never heard of in my life. Oh my goodness. There's a great, I'm not an Eagles fan, but that is a great look there. That Kelly Green with the silver pants and the silver wings. And Keith Jackson. I do remember him being a big-time tight end. I'm pretty sure he played at Oklahoma. Lived a good portion of my childhood in Oklahoma watching OU and OSU. So Keith Jackson, big name there. All right, we got another Viking. This time Hassan Jones. No clue. Wide receiver, though. I'm just hoping I get an Anthony Carter. Cool old Dolphins helmet there. They didn't change their whole look, but they definitely modernized it. But every once in a while, they'll go to these throwbacks, and it just looks so classic. It just looks like Dan Marino. Anyone remember Dan Marino doing Isotoner gloves commercials around the holidays? There's a throwback for you. No clue who that Raider is, but this was the Los Angeles Raiders before they moved to Oakland, before they moved from Oakland to Los Angeles. I think that's how it went, is it not? I could have that backwards. And then to Las Vegas, where they are now. Bert Grossman for the San Diego Chargers. We've got another Colt, Donnell Thompson. That sounds kind of familiar. He must have been an impact guy. Coming down to the last few here. Are we going to get any superstars or are we not? At least we got Michael Irvin. Jeff George. Wow. Okay, so this is his draft. That makes sense. He's wearing his Illinois stuff. He was a big deal quarterback coming out. I don't think he ever lived up to expectations. I'm pretty sure he was the #1 overall pick. I wouldn't call him a bust, but I don't think he ever lived up to the hype. Got another Patriot here. Stanley Morgan. Sounds like an insurance broker, does it not? Okay, and here we've got, oh, that's a cool one. That's a star player right there. Mike Singletary for the Bears. Now, this was 5 years removed from the '85 Bears with the Super Bowl shuffle and one of the best defenses of all time. But Singletary was still a good player. I remember him tormenting the 49ers and the Cowboys in playoff games. They had always, John Madden and Pat Summerall would talk so highly about him, and they'd zoom in on his eyes when he was, standing behind the line getting ready to go attack the quarterback. Just epic, epic stuff. He's going in the star pile along with Michael Irvin. Oh, there we go. Now we're talking. Good old Troy. Now, Troy Aikman in 1990, you were seeing some promise. He was the #1 overall pick out of UCLA, transferred from OU before transferring was as common as it is now, kind of ruining college football in my opinion, but this is what they rebuilt the franchise around. They got him. They already had Michael Irvin. They got Emmitt Smith, and then they rebuilt that defense with Charles Haley and Darren Woodson and some guys, eventually adding Dion, and it led to a dynasty there in the 90s. So I actually have this jersey, well, one of the old champion replicas of that jersey that I wear a lot of the time on Sundays in the fall. Cool card there. And look, we've got both Cowboys cards that we got. They're wearing their blue, which they don't wear their blue very often. They're almost always in white, so it's cool that I got two cards of them wearing their navy. Another Redskin, I don't think I've heard of him. Don Warren. No. Cool look on the Chargers there. Don't remember Lee Williams. Another Eagle. That name sounds familiar, Anthony Toney. You know, I at least got to see the Eagles play twice every year when they played the Cowboys. So I'm a little bit familiar with some of their guys. Scott Studwell for the Vikings. Never heard of him. Love the uniform and helmet. And then last, and I guess kind of least, we get Sean Landetta from the Giants. Look at that single bar face mask. Wow. Well, there you have it. A bunch of players that, you know, couldn't care less about, but I'm going to put these in a binder, like I said, and we're going to do some more of these types of videos, and I'll keep you guys updated as I go along this journey, because these types of packs are not expensive, but they're fun to make little videos about. They're fun to look through and reminisce, and out of that whole set, I got 3 cards that I'm pretty happy with, so fun time. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And there we are. So I hope that you all enjoyed our quick little nostalgic hangout here in the den today. And if you did, consider subscribing. But for now, and as always, relax, enjoy life, and be kind. We'll see you in the next one.